Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. Now, before we get into this week's editorial, we want to take this time to wish all mothers across the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique a happy Mother's Day. Today, I remember my late mother, Nancy Anna Bub, who is now an ancestor. Now, the mother-child relationship is unlike any other, and our views about ourselves and the world around us are uniquely shaped by mothers. And then when women become mothers themselves, they find that their lives are changed by their children forever. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. To all Grenadians, Grenadian mothers, and Grenadian mothers and mothers around the world. Now, as the Caribbean islands are continuing to see more frequent and severe droughts from reduced precipitation and increased evaporative demand due to anthropogenic climate change, since 1950, the Caribbean has been affected by notable droughts in 1974 to 1977, 1997 to 1998, 2009 to 2010, and in 2013 and 2016. Now, for the 40 million people in the region, drought is the likeliest cause of severe food shortage, and it is a key issue for Caribbean food security, according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. These droughts, which are expected to be much more severe in the future, has also been exacerbated by a growing number of pressures, ranging from saltwater intrusion as a result of sea level rise to demands from the energy, agricultural, and tourism sectors. Alleviating the impacts of droughts, however, require a transition from drought crisis responses to proactive drought risk management. These management factors include the equal administration of water rationing across all sectors. Now, if the citizens of Grenada are to bear the brunt of water rationing, so too should the hotels in the southern belt and in the southeastern belt of the island. The use of excess water at these facilities, some of whom claim to be sustainable, should be cut short forthwith, and perhaps they should learn from the people of Carriacou, who have for decades practiced rainwater harvesting. Further, all major hotels in Grenada must also invest in their own desalination plants. In that way, you are reducing pressure on the National Water and Sewage Authority, which gives the authority to give the authority the impetus to prioritize how it should make use of the increasingly scarce water supplies coming from diminished and drying rivers, mangroves, and other fresh water sources all across Grenada. Given the current climate and infrastructure realities, we cannot expect NAWASA to save us. We can't expect this utility company to make water out of stone. And for many decades, environmentalists, climatologists, and activists have been raising the alarm about the impacts of certain development projects that encroach on ecologically valuable watersheds and groundwater capacity. And as this water crisis continues, sustainable water management requires a comprehensive approach, and the importance of building resilient to climate change impact in the region is clear. This is the Bub Report. We will be right back with our first guest for this week's program, Mr. Anthony Boson, the former Member of Parliament for St. Patrick West. Please stand by. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Please remember to like and share this week's conversation. Now, last week on GBN's Beyond the Headlines program, the former Member of Parliament for St. Patrick West and senior NNP stalwart who also served as the party's chairman, Mr. Anthony Boson, broke his silence since his party's defeat at the polls in 2022. Mr. Boson's wide-ranging comments on the state of his party happened in the same week that Dr. Berth Brathwaite, an invitee to NNP's executive meeting for many years, was disinvited from attending future engagements at the executive level following his interview on Calistro Faria's The Narrative Program, which delved into the leadership and the future of the organization. At this time, we're happy to be joined on the Bub Report by Mr. Anthony Boson. He has been a frequent guest on this program, articulating many issues in relation to the previous administration, and he has never shied away from being asked the hard questions. Mr. Boson, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bob, and let me join you in extending Happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers, not only in Grenada, but throughout the world. And I do share the sentiment that you have expressed with regards to the significance and the important role that mothers play in our society. And also, again, I want to share with you the similar sentiments with regards to the impact of climate change and what is happening to us right now with regards to our water supply. But fortunately for me, I am in an area where I am not experiencing the severity of the water shortage, but I do empathize with those who are experiencing the water shortage. So once again, I'm happy to be on your program and to share whatever experience you may want me to share.
Yes, sir. Of course. Speaking of the issue of climate change in relation to water, of course, St. Patrick has seen that impact. We have seen the inundation of a sea level rise and the way that it has impacted several communities. In fact, the breakwater was meant to mitigate this. So we are seeing those real world impacts. It is no longer an abstract scientific conversation that people should be having. It's happening now. It's real.
You are absolutely correct. And as the young people will say, it is right in our face. We are experiencing it right here in St. Patrick, the impact
Yep.
of climate change.
Absolutely. And so, Mr. Boson, again, welcome to the program, sir. Now, what we want to do, sir, before we get into a number of the issues that you raised in your conversation as part of that panel on Grenada Broadcasting Networks Beyond the Headlines, we do want to pull back the curtain, if you will, on a number of issues that you raised. But first, I want you to react to news that your political party voted to exclude Dr. Bert Brathwaite from attending executive meetings. Now, Dr. Brathwaite is not, shall we say, a Johnny come lately in the organization. He comes with institutional knowledge in respect of the new National Party. He has had a very long personal relationship with Dr. Mitchell that goes back to his time in Barbados, Dr. Mitchell's time in Barbados. Can you react to the news of his of his removal, is this invitation from the executive?
Certainly, Dr. Bob, I would like to comment on that unfortunate development within the new National Party. An invitee is what it is what it is. Someone who has been invited by either the political leader or the executive to attend executive meetings. Dr. Brathwaite has been an invitee for a number of years, I think going almost 30 years. And therefore, whereas one will say that he has been a long-standing member of the executive, I believe that the party executive or the political leader, whoever invited him, can also disinvite him, yeah, without having to go through any channels like appearance before a disciplinary committee. That is not relevant with regards to an invitee. If you are an elected member of the executive, then you have to go through those channels. However, notwithstanding, I was shocked and really disappointed to know that someone like Dr. Brathwaite, a long-standing member who has served on the executive and has contributed to the party in so many different ways, was treated with such scant courtesy. I have no difficulty with the decision taken. However, it's how it was done. I believe that if Dr. Brathwaite had incurred any infraction or did or say anything that was contrary to the basic principles and policies of the party, then he should have been entitled to what I would call a warning, a caution, someone, even the political leader, could have called Dr. Boffin in and said, listen, I am not happy with what you have said, and I hope that, you will not do such in the future. But to take this drastic step to just disinvite him like that, I believe does not augur well for the future of the new national party.
Well,
I looked through the constitution of the party, and
yes.
where
No. So, but the counter argument from the party will be, well, perhaps he violated, I suppose, the see no evil, hear no evil, do no evil rule by speaking out publicly on the state of affairs of the party in the way that he did in such spectacular fashion and Callisto Farias, the narrative program. Now, in my understanding, or after viewing the program, I do not know that he said anything that was untoward or extremely harsh towards Dr. Mitchell. But that is what the party may perceive it as. Your thoughts in respect
well,
of
as I,
what the
as I
counter
was going to
argument?
say, Dr. Bob,
Yeah.
the constitution of the new national party is based on the fundamental principle of democracy, and democracy means that one should have the right to speak. Yeah, we are not in a totalitarian environment. And I listened to Dr. Brafitt on that program, and up to now, I'm at odds to decipher what exactly he said that was inconsistent or contrary to the norms and policies of the party. I listened to the chairman of the party. I also listened to the general secretary on various media, in which they did indicate that there will be a convention of the party sometime this year. Dr. Brophy did not say anything that was inconsistent with what the chairman of the party said before or what the general secretary of the party said before. Therefore, the question is, why take such harsh measures against Dr. Brophy? I do not know, or I have not heard that any measures, similar measures were taken against the chairman of the party or the general secretary, who made reference to the party holding convention.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I am at loss. Again, I think that the New National Party is acting out of desperation.
Mhm.
And there's an old saying that history has a way of repeating itself whenever you do not learn the lesson that it was intended to teach you. We can go back to 2012, 2013, when the NDC had similar problems or even deeper problems, and they expelled certain members of the executive. And what was the consequence of that? They moved from a situation where they had a 11-4 majority in the parliament to 15-0. We have to learn our lesson. Politics is about addition and multiplication and not subtraction and division. And if we continue along this route, where if anyone was to raise an issue that is not in favor with what the leader of the party, because let us be clear, and I will speak true to form. It is not the executive. It is really the political leader who has the clout, who has the power to disinvite Dr. Brafitt.
Dr. Brathwaite.
If the political leader was not in favor, if he did not make mention of it, no way the executive will act on whatever Dr. Mitchell tells them to do. And this is, to me, is unfortunate in what we call a democracy, for which the constitution of the New National Party speaks so loudly about.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Now, it would appear that there are a couple words that trigger Dr. Mitchell, one of which is convention. Because every time Mr. Peter David, when he appeared on the Bob Report and articulated his intention to contest the leadership of the party, in a very mal-mannered way, I shall say, he made some very qualifying statements, as did Mrs. Emmeline Pay, MP, Honorable Emmeline Pay, MP for St. Andrew Southeast. But it would appear as if Dr. Mitchell does not want to have a conversation about leadership. And I just can't imagine what is happening now in respect of his train of thought now that you are making public appearances?
Well, I, to be honest with you, I'm at a loss with regards to the thinking of the political leader with regards to holding a convention and the way forward for the party.
Mhm.
The constitution of the party clearly states that there shall be a convention of the party once every year. Yeah. And it also went on to state that there could be a special convention if one third of the members who are eligible to vote in the convention request of the general secretary to have such a convention. Yeah. So in essence, the party is operating ultra virus its own constitution by not holding a convention. And therefore, nothing is wrong with anyone asking when will there be a convention of the party? Yeah, because really the executive, the so-called executive now, which was elected over 2 years ago, is still operating. And this is not consistent with what the constitution of the party says. However, no one is challenging that.
Hmm.
And therefore, it begs the question, quo vadis, where do we go? Where does the party go with regards to holding a convention, which is a requirement based on the constitution of the party? And I agree with you, I detect a level of hesitancy with regards to holding a convention. The excuse that has been given, and again, it is a very lame excuse, that the party needs to reorganize and organize before it has a convention. The new National Party has been in power for, I mean, not in power, but in existence, so almost 40 years. I have been
1984.
1984, 40 years.
Yes.
I have been
Mhm.
a member of the new National Party since 1997. And I can't recall at any time then that the argument was put forward that a convention must be delayed because we have to organize or do whatever to the party. This is the first time this is happening. What is so different now that you have to spend more than 2 years to organize delegates to go to a convention? I have my own suspicion about the whole thing. I've heard others speak about the possibility of what are the reasons why there are no moves towards holding a convention right now. As I've said on the previous program, I believe that there is a split with regards to delegates and members' position as to the leadership of the party in going forward.
Mhm.
There's one school of thought, and I'm telling you what I'm hearing on the go. There's one school of thought which says that, notwithstanding the pronouncements of the political leader that he will not be offering himself again for leadership of the party, there is some level of what I call, I don't want to use a word that will not sound right, but untruthfulness in
Mhm.
that statement. And based on what is happening now, based on some of the mistakes that the NDC might be making, there's a feeling that, well, there could be a significant turnaround in terms of people's position with regards to how they will vote in a coming election. And to me, it is not solid grounds on which to stand.
Mhm.
You cannot build or you cannot expect to win an election based on what you perceive to be the weakness of the government in power right now.
Mhm.
That will, whatever weakness exists right now, that could change at any time. And therefore, the NNP has to build its own structure. The NNP has to get its own house in order. But I detect that there's this feeling that, okay, things will change and the NNP will slip back into office and the existing political leader will remain. To be honest with you, I do not believe I am not sensing that Dr. Mitchell is indeed prepared to demit office. I think based on the fact that he lost the last general election, he feels that redemption time will come and he should be there to lead
His
the party.
veritable, his one for the road, Mr. Boson. That was one
It is
of your
one for the
campaign
road.
slogans.
That's one for the road to me was that is illusionary. It was not one for the road out. To me, it's one for the road to consolidate power within the party and to be the next prime minister of Grenada again. I have no doubt in my mind that Dr. Mitchell is entertaining the thought that he could be prime minister again. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And as I said before, if you have said that you are not running again, you are not contesting again, that's your last, and you're entertaining some illusionary thoughts that you could come back to be prime minister again, then let the people know that, listen, I have changed my mind. I believe that I can continue to make a contribution, and therefore I want to be considered as the leader. If if Dr. Mitchell today was to say, I have changed my mind, I doubt there will be any, I won't call it challenge, aspirants to leadership of the New National Party. I doubt there will be. Once Dr. Mitchell decided I'm going back, because no one will want to challenge Dr. Mitchell at a convention for leadership of the party. I doubt it. Yeah. But as I said before, there seems to be some move, indirect, that you go to a convention, you have enough delegates that will be supportive of Dr. Mitchell, and they will nominate him, and they will say, well, Dr. Mitchell will say, well, okay, fine, I've been nominated. I was not interested in going back as leadership for leadership of the party, but the people want me to be continue to be leader, and therefore I will accept. That could be one possibility. Another possibility is that he's waiting to appoint or he's waiting to anoint someone in whom he can entrust confidence to be leader of the party. Someone I don't want to say he could manipulate, but someone he could, work very closely with as leader of the party. And as it stands right now, the person who is presenting himself as a leader to be the potential leader, I do not believe Dr. Mitchell has that person in high estimate, high confidence.
And that
Therefore,
is Mr.
that is the
And that
problem
is
that we
Mr.
face
Pete.
right now.
That is Mr. Peter David. Yes.
Well, to be honest, Peter David is the only one, um, apart from Emlyn Pierre, who has come out and say, once Dr. Mitchell is not running again, he will be prepared to throw his hat in the ring. I've
Yes.
heard Emlyn Pierre make a similar statement that once there is a vacancy, then she's prepared to throw her hat in the ring as well. These are the two persons so far who have expressed interest in leadership of the party. But I dare say that will not happen. That ain't going to happen. That isn't going to
Now,
happen.
now, Mr. Boson, I think it is important, and you can hear me clearly. There is no hum or anything. No, you can hear me very clearly.
Yes.
Yes, very well. Just making sure because sometimes the audio fails. But I think it is important, sir, to peel back the layers to understand why we got here. And for us on the Bob Report, what we want to do is to sort of get to the why behind the current reality. So let us go back to the election season of 2022, if you will. Now, a candidate was chosen in your constituency to contest the NNP to contest the seat on an NNP ticket. Now, how involved were you in that candidate selection process or in the candidate selection process for any of the candidates selected in the last election? Were the rank and file members of the party happy with the choice? And did they feel as if the choices of candidates happened in a democratic process?
That is a very long, that will take the entire program, Dr. Bob, to explain the St. Patrick scenario.
Yes.
There is absolutely no doubt that in St. Patrick, the candidate who was selected, who was endorsed, received the support of the constituency branch in St. Patrick,
Okay.
and also the support of the standing member of parliament. Yeah, that was myself. Yeah,
Which is yourself, of course.
there's
Yes.
absolutely no doubt about that, right? So no
Hmm.
one will say, well, okay, that person came up and he was appointed or anointed by someone outside of the St. Patrick West executive. That did not happen.
Okay.
We
Okay.
endorsed the candidate. However,
Okay.
in going forward, certain developments took place that were not consistent with some of the basic principles of the executive in St. Patrick and myself in particular. And therefore we expressed concern about the candidate. Yeah, there's no doubt. We invited Dr. Mitchell to a meeting in McDonald College to address some of the concerns that we were having in St. Patrick with regards to the candidate. And unfortunately, instead of bringing together the different forces, the different groups, and the concern, addressing the concerns, that meeting turned out to be it was chaos in the sense that it created more division than unity within the NMP in St. Patrick. And that was the beginning of the end, yeah, of the support of the executive in St. Patrick for the candidate, because the political leader did not come to the meeting with that spirit of unity. And anyone could tell you, anyone who attended that meeting could tell you that was what happened. It was more a belligerent, a bellicose approach where you must do this or you must, and it did not go down well. And therefore, the candidate lost the support of a significant number of potential NNP supporters in St. Patrick. In addition, there are other issues which I will not bring to the public. I don't think it is fair. It is
Yes.
well ventilated. The executive know very well the other issues, which were far more stunning, far more serious
Hmm.
in terms of a candidate going forward. Because if you stand on certain basic principles of honesty and integrity, I don't see how you could compromise that on the altar of political expediency. And that to me was a downfall. We
Hmm.
asked for a compromise candidate, which we presented to the political leader. That was turned down, and we know the end result in
The
St.
rest is
Patrick. We
history.
lost St.
So,
Patrick, we lost a seat. They could have won easily. I'm telling you that.
so what I hear you saying here, Mr. Boson, is that these issues around unifying and galvanizing the party did not start in the post-election period. That there were fissures and tensions in well, you just articulated one constituency branch. I'm not sure if you know what was happening in the other constituencies. So what
No,
I
I
hear you
don't.
saying is that there were tensions within the rank and file uh, uh, before the elections, in the lead up to the elections, and
I
this does
don't.
not
I cannot speak on behalf of any other constituency. I can only speak on behalf of the constituency that I
of St. Patrick
represented.
West. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
I don't know
Yes.
about any others.
Understood. Okay. Now let us talk about the immediate aftermath of the election, Mr. Boson. Was there any serious post-mortem done in which you were involved? Of course, you are a senior member of the party as well, to discuss why the party lost and how it can use those lessons to correct the mistakes. Now, your former cabinet colleague, MP Delma Thomas, who crossed the floor, indicated that one of the reasons why she developed an acrimonious relationship with Dr. Mitchell, it came to a head after she broached the idea of leadership transition in the party. Now, can you talk about what was happening following the election, and was there any postmortem done that included the question of leadership?
I am not. To be honest, I was not deeply involved in any postmortem with regards to the the party. All I can
Yes.
recall is that we had a retreat in which the issue came up as to the future. How do we go forward? Yeah, I
Mhm.
recall that retreat. That retreat took place, I think, in a place they call Mangozo. And members expressed their concern. They expressed reasons why they felt the party lost the election. Yeah, that was ventilated, and how we should go, how the party could go forward. However, nothing, none of the recommendations that were made then were ever implemented. Yeah, but Dr. Bob, I want to go back
Yes, sir.
even before the election
Mhm.
because I was a member of the strategy committee and the person responsible, given the responsibility to look at succession planning within the new national party. That responsibility was given to me. Yeah, and
I
really,
remember
I believe
I remember you mentioned the committee. You did mention that
correct,
publicly as well.
correct,
Yes.
because and the intention then, because Dr. Mitchell had expressed that okay, that was his last, he was not going back, and we should look for a successor. Yeah. And I did present, with the support of other members, a paper to the to Dr. Mitchell as to how we could go forward. And I want to be honest with you, because I'm hearing some people say that I am supporting Peter David. I'm not supporting anybody. As it stands right now, I am not supporting anybody. I 2 years ago, I took a decision to retire from frontline politics. Yeah,
Mhm. Yes.
I had my retirement function here, and as it stands right now, I'm not beholden to anyone, to any party. I'm still a member, but I'm not an executive member. I do not attend executive member of the party because I told myself that once I attain the age of 70, three score and 10, I will withdraw from frontline politics. And that was a decision I made a long time ago.
Mhm.
And that was irreversible as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. So, but prior to the election, there was a clear strategy as to how the party will go forward. Because we saw then the reemergence of the National Democratic Congress. Yeah, most people felt that the NDC was not a threat, but once they had an election in the convention and a new leader, a young leader, emerged, my position as the head of that committee to look at succession planning was that NNP has to be rebranded in going forward. We must rebrand NNP. And the rebranding had various aspects. To me, the most important aspect of rebranding of the NDC in the paper that I presented was that we have to look towards youthful leadership to take over from Dr. Mitchell. It was very
Mhm.
clear that Dr. Mitchell was going to lead the party into the election. There was no issue about that. But post election, there was a strategy as to how we will go forward. That, and I don't want to go into too much of the party thing, but the intention was that we will go for more youthful leadership, right? And in my opinion, then I'm expressing a personal opinion. I felt that with the intergenerational change that was taking place, NNP had to look not only for a youthful leader, but even to create greater appeal, we should look to a female. Because I believe that Grenadians would have been excited to know that we will have our first female prime minister. And therefore, I sub two names or two females were submitted. Yeah, one that was not in Grenada and one living here. But unfortunately, that did not materialize. We went into the election. NNP lost for a number of reasons we could go through why they lost. Political reasons, economic reasons. The NNP lost. And we have the situation that we have now that we are not, and they are not addressing the key issues. Because I said in the paper, NNP was suffering from political fatigue. And I also went on to say that unless we address the issue within the party, we will end up with what we call the GULP syndrome. And I'm seeing that happening right now. We're going down the route of the GULP.
That is a serious indictment on your party, because we know what happened with the Grenada United Labour Party with the death of
Exactly.
Sir Eric Matthew Gary. The party was disintegrated, pretty much.
But
Okay, yes,
because
go ahead, sir. Finish your thought.
what is happening now are really signs of possible disintegration. And for the sake of the party, I hope that that does not happen. But
Hmm.
what will happen? What was it? GULP syndrome? An ultimate leader who did not, well, I would say he did not, but within the party structure, there was no one who was identified as a possible replacement of that ultimate leader. And I'm hoping this is not the same syndrome we're seeing right now, where someone is leader and that person will be leader for life. And once that person is off, then the party collapses. That would be a serious problem for the new national party. That once the leader goes, the party goes. That's what happened to the GLP. And NNP
Well,
must take
except
steps now to ensure that this doesn't happen to this party.
yeah, well, except Mr. Boson, the Prime Minister, well, the former Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell, that was a Freudian slip there. Former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, he has been articulating his intention to ride into the sunset. Except what he has articulated is that he wants that transition to be an orderly transition. Do you not believe him when he says that, one, he wants the transition to be orderly, and two, he wants the party structures to be properly organized and ready to take over structurally and organizationally at that point when he hands over the mantle of leadership to another person?
First of all, I want to know how you define orderly transition.
Mhm.
This is a democratic. This is a party that is built on the foundation of democracy. If you have a leader who has made it clear that he is not prepared to continue, he will ride into the sunset. That was one for the road. That was his last. Then it is only fair within a democratic setting that aspirants to leadership should emerge and present themselves to the electorate so they could be scrutinized. Yeah? And I'm not talking about polit- um, potential aspirants within the executive right now, but there might be others outside there. Yeah? You cannot wait on the last moment to just drop someone on the party and say this is the person. No. NLP accused the NDC of doing that. Someone just parachuted down into the leadership of the party. NDC was accused of that. So why are you prepared to do the same thing that you accuse the NDC of? Yeah, you're not prepared to go back. Fine. As a matter of fact, Kellan, I will tell you something now. Even at the retreat that we had, right? I suggested that Dr. Mitchell should continue until such time as a new leader, as the party decide to find a new leader. But you cannot be opposed to anyone who has expressed an interest in leadership of the party.
Hmm.
Yeah, you cannot, and you should not. Anyone is free to say, well, listen, the political leader is no longer interested, he's no longer going back. I am prepared to throw my hat in the ring. What is wrong with that? That is democracy. Unless you are telling me, no, that we have what, again, the Papa Doc syndrome, that I am living, so I decide who must take over from me. Is that democracy? And if one question that, are you saying that that person is going contrary to the norms of the party? To question democracy within the party? I cannot accept that. As I said, you look at NNP, and there are a host of people, in my opinion, who are qualified to take over the leadership of NNP. You could look within the present parliamentary, the parliamentarians.
Mhm.
And any one of them, they could take over the leadership of the New National Party. To me, in my opinion, they're competent and they qualified. You can go outside. You could go into the Senate and you see potential leadership in the Senate again. You go outside and you see people who qualify to take on the leadership of the New National Party. I don't want to call names, but they know who they are. And their names have been bandied around in certain quarters, but no one dare come forward and say, "Oh, yes, I'm prepared to do that." And then, this kind of fear that now pervades the NNP, that once you speak, you will be placed under manners, to me is archaic, is backward, and it will redound to the defeat of the NNP in going forward. This is not the right way. The people now, they're hungry, they're looking for leadership within the New National Party, and they do not know exactly which direction to turn. Because you hear some people saying, well, Peter David is the person. Some others saying Emlyn Pierre is the best person suited. Others saying Akima Paul. You hear Dwight Hosford name being
Hosford,
called.
uh-huh.
Dwight Hosford name being called. Let all if these people are, if they are interested, let them present themselves to the electorate, to the party stalwarts, and based on how they perform, the parties, the convention will decide which one will emerge. And hopefully that everyone will unite, right, in support of whoever emerges as leader of the party. But as it stands right now, there seems to be that, no, this person is not, I don't want that person to apply. I don't want, that cannot work. You're destroying the fabric of the party by so doing. Again, we're not learning the lesson. People talk and you throw them out. Politics is about addition and multiplication. The NEC did it in 2012 and 2013, and they suffered one of the worst defeats ever. NNP seemed to be going down the same road. That once you say something that is not even inconsistent with the norms and principles of the party, you get rid of them. When you get rid of one, remember there's a ripple effect. People are looking. They're saying that if someone like, let's say, Dr. Brafitt, we know is not someone who say is not a heavyweight within the party, could be treated that way. I mean, what will happen to a heavyweight?
Mm-hmm.
Is that how? That's not how you treat. That's not how you deal with people, especially people who have been struggling with the party for over 25 or 30 years. You do not treat people that way. It shows a level of ungratefulness that will come back to haunt the new National Party. And I'm glad I'm not part of that machinery anymore. I'm on the sideline looking on.
But you are still a card-carrying member of the NNP,
I
and I
am not
suspect you will be
resigned.
attending.
I have
Uh-huh.
not. I have not resigned from the party. But as I said, I'm not participating in any executive meetings. I'm not participating in any constituency meeting. My commitment, as I said, once I attain the age of 70, I will withdraw from frontline politics and make myself available to contribute to national development. As it stands right
Mhm.
now, my focus is on national development. I want to see Grenada go forward, and whoever is coming forward with a good plan to move this country forward can be assured of my support right now. That's how I stand.
That move the country forward. That's part of NDC's slogan in the last election. It's interesting that you're using the same terminology. It's I said that in jest.
Well, I think whether it's NNP or NDC, we have to move the country forward. We can't stand still or we can go backward. So I think NDC selected a very good slogan, move forward. I think,
All right.
it's
But
commonality.
well, Mr. Boson, some would say that you have known Dr. Mitchell for many decades. You have had that relationship with him for many decades. You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, "Why are you coming now to talk about those issues and not do so
Uh,
previously? Why now?"
Very good. Very good. Because never before Dr. Mitchell indicated that he would not be running again. So no one, I mean, it would have been ridiculous of me to speak on the issue of leadership if Dr. Mitchell has indicated that he is still interested in leading the party. So the question is, now is the time to speak. I would never challenge, go oppose to Dr. Mitchell leadership of the new national party. Never. Yeah. But once he has indicated that he is no longer going forward, you have the right to decide who will take over. And now is the time for people to find out, to speak as to who is best to take over in a convention based on the delegates scrutinizing before the potential candidates. So the question is, why now? It is now because never before. And I have the maximum respect for Dr. Mitchell. I mean, he has done, I mean, Dr. Mitchell has done great things for Grenada. Let's not fool ourselves. Yeah? Some of us may have our own feelings about him, and that's personal. But in terms of overall development, contribution to the growth of the country, he has made a contribution that is unparalleled as far as I'm concerned right now. Yeah? But the fact is that nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts. There comes a time when we have to say, this is it. And as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Mitchell said, this is it. And if you said this is it, do you wait until there's a vacuum before you decide how the party will go forward? That is not how you build a party. Right? That is not how you build a party. Look at what happened to the GULP. NMP, you don't want to go down that route because you will implode, you will self-destruct if you take that route that there's an ultimate leader and nobody else could emerge, although that leader said, I am not going back. I will not lead this party to another convention. The second point you made with regards to reorganizing and organizing, as I said, for over 20 years, I have never experienced any situation where NMP had to wait for 2 years to organize and reorganize to get delegates to go to a convention. That to me that's a smoke screen for something more intriguing that we need to analyze. 2 years, you cannot organize your delegates to go to a convention. Something got to be wrong. It has never happened before.
And I just want to be clear. The constitution of the party says a convention shall be held.
Shall. Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on the reading of the constitution.
It must. Yes, shall.
Okay.
That's what it says. And 2 years. Don't tell me you need. So wait, how long? So as long as you do not organize, what do you need to organize delegates? What do you need to organize delegates? You have your constituency branches. The executive is in existence, although there's no convention. Hence, the constituency branches should be in existence as well. Because the constituency branches, they are creatures of the convention. So if the executive is 2 years in arrears, as you will say, then the constituency branch will follow similar pattern. The national executive is functioning, yeah? What is preventing the constituency executive from functioning as well? Because they are the ones who select delegates to a convention. And they are there. They have not been dismantled. So what is the problem? They have not been dismantled. Because the executive is still functioning, although ultra virus the constitution. Why can't the constituency branches function ultra virus the constitution as well? So I'm not buying that.
Okay.
I'm not buying that.
Mr. Boson, 2 final questions because we have to get to the next segment. The first final question has to do with other shoes to drop. In other words, are there going to be other people in the organization coming forward to articulate their concerns in respect of the state of the party, in respect of not only having a convention, but in respect of leadership to move the party forward? You did say that if a convention was held today, that Dr. Mitchell will lose that internal election, but you also said that there is a swing against favorable sentiment towards Dr. Mitchell.
No. I did not say there is a convention today, Dr. Mitchell will lose. No, I did not say that.
Well,
He
you
will
said,
lose.
well,
What will he lose? If he's not, if I never, I said, if Dr. Mitchell decides that if there's a change of heart, he's going
and that
back
he
as
wants to
leader.
contest the leadership. Yes.
He will,
Okay.
no one will challenge him in a convention. So he will win.
Okay. Okay.
He will win.
That's right.
That's my opinion. He will win. But once it's someone he wants to anoint or appoint, that person, there's no guarantee that person will win.
I see.
That's my
Okay.
thing. That's my
Thanks for
thinking.
that clarification. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that
no.
clarification. Yeah.
No one,
But yeah.
no one will
Hmm.
challenge Dr. Mitchell in a convention. I dare anyone
Hmm.
to challenge him. They will lose.
Hmm. Okay. Absolutely. Now, are there any other stalwarts in your party who share the same sentiment with you and who are willing to come forward? Are
I
there
don't
any
know.
other shoes to drop, if you
No,
will?
I cannot speak on behalf of anybody else. I could be.
Okay.
I
But,
feel.
but I'm
I
sure
am.
you've been having conversations with members of the party.
I am prepared to be an army of one. If it takes
Okay.
me alone to talk, I will talk. Yeah, and I'm talking truth to power. I am talking because I am feel deeply about what I'm saying. Yeah, and what I'm saying is not, in my opinion, is not wrong. I think it's right. It is what will promote democracy in the party. It is what will
Mhm.
promote a strengthening of the new national party if they want to be um, a contender in the upcoming next election. Because let us face it, as I said before, many of them are banking on that illusionary thinking that NDC will collapse and NNP will emerge. That is not going to happen. I mean, the strength of the NNP cannot be dependent on the weakness of the NDC. And those
Mhm.
who are thinking that way are living in a fantasy world. NDC has rebranded. They have rebranded not only in terms of leadership, but in terms of the application of technology within their organization. NNP is still in this is still backward in terms of the application of technology, you know. And the whole thing of leadership is still, as I said, people are experiencing fatigue.
Mhm.
They're experiencing fatigue. Dr. Mitchell, as I said, if he changes his mind and decides to be the leader of NNP, he will go unopposed, but that is no guarantee that NNP will win an upcoming election. Because, as I said, we have to rebrand. A political organization is like a product. You start off and everybody rush to you, everybody want to buy it. Then you
Mhm.
have competition, it goes through what they call a plateau. And unless you rebrand, and you know how they rebrand, they repackage the product. It could be the same product, but they repackage it, make it look
Mhm.
like something new, right? And change the image. And it becomes almost as a new product again. I
Mhm.
do not see that happening in the NMP right now. So they're way behind.
People
And,
also like novelty. The
and they
electorate
like
likes
novel
novelty.
ends.
Yes.
Why do you think NDC won the election? Because a young, aspiring leader, let us see what he could do. You know, let us, well, Dr. Mitchell was there. We know what he could do. We know what he's capable of. That is the novel. That is what we have to look at, my friend. In terms of internal of the again, as I said, I am not a member of the executive. I'm just speaking as someone on the outside who still. Um, I have not yet been. I don't know if they will throw me out as a member of the party, but if that is it, so be it. But I will speak truth to power. I will
Well,
speak
well,
truth
well,
to
well,
power.
well. If past his prologue, if based on Dr. Brathwaite's appearance on Callistra Faria's The Narrative, Mr. Peter David's appearance on the Bob Report when he initially announced his intention to contest the leadership, I say that perhaps you should maybe say your prayers.
I have no. I have, as I said, I have disinvited myself from the executive a long time ago.
Okay.
I cannot you cannot throw as a single. I'm outside. I'm outside. Uh, I am not an active member of NMP. As I said, I am prepared to make my contribution to national development, not to political wrangling right now. Any activity, any plan to move the country forward, to develop the country, to make Grenada a better place to live, and you need my contribution to do that, I certainly will. And regardless to political affiliation, that's how I see it right now.
Absolutely, Mr. Boson. We quickly have to get to the next segment, but some final closing comments before we get to that segment.
Well, as I said, I believe it was the Dr. Profit's issue that stimulated this discussion.
Yes.
And again, I want to say that it's not illegal. They have not done anything illegal in terms of disinviting him. But I think it was unfortunate to do that because politics is about numbers. And there's no need to treat someone of the stature of Dr. Profit in that way. It could have been done in a different way. It tells us something about the creeping mentality within the New National Party. Dictatorship, you do as I say, or else you go out. And Dr. Profit is not the only one who, I mean, yes, he's the one who has experienced the wrath in terms of being thrown out of the executive. But I know there are others who they feel the same thing about, but they can't do anything because they have to go through a process. With Dr. Profit, you don't have to go through that process. But
and that process would be the disciplinary committee.
Exactly. You must go as a member. You cannot just throw out a member like that. You got to go through the process, the disciplinary process. So Dr. Profit happened to be the casualty of what I call unfortunate and what I will even call a reckless act on the part of the executive. It should not happen that way. It will do harm to the party rather than good. And you have to learn from experience. NDC did something similar or worse, and they moved from 11-4 to 15-0. NNP has 5 seats now in the parliament. They continue along this path of trying to shut up people when they speak and try to throw out people. You will end up that might be the first time you might end up with 0. So please watch your steps.
Watch your steps. On that note, watch your steps. Mr. Anthony Boson, thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, Mr. Anthony Boson, he was a former member of parliament for the constituency of St. Patrick West, having also contested that constituency for the New National Party in several election cycles. Mr. Boson also served as the Minister for Finance and Education in the previous NNP administrations. And of course, in the last hour, he articulated his concerns in respect of the future of his party and also sort of peel back the layers in respect to some of the leadership dynamics and organizational dynamics that are taking place in the organization. Viewers, we will take a quick break and come back with the panel segment of the week. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
not what the ministers are saying, is that very few public officers have felt the impact of what they call regularization. As the cooks, as the orderlies, as some of the teachers, as the nurses, you know what they do? They have not made the nurses permanent. They have increased their salary even without discussing the union, a violation of the ILO principle. So when you speak about bigging up the ILO, that's great. But let us respect collective bargaining, free collective bargaining, and recognize the role of organized labor. So don't go behind the union back. Don't refuse to speak to the public workers union, and go and meet with the nurses and doctors and increase their pay so that they will feel that the union is irrelevant. They are not made permanent. And we challenge the minister and the government to give us the numbers. They are speaking about close to 300 workers. What is preventing the stroke of a pen to saying that you are no longer considered to be contract or temporary, or you're permanent? If
this government continues to honor its commitment to regularize public workers. And Brother Grimes, a word of caution. When you speak, research first. Because we do what we say, and we say what we do. We make promises, and we keep them. Because the days of mamagairy and tomfoolery and bubble, those days are over. You have new kids on the block now whose word you can take. We're not signing any agreement just before election and then reneging. We're doing everything now because our interest is the workers. So in case of regularization of workers, brothers and sisters, here are the facts.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bob Report. Of course, the minister said on the tail end of that conversation, here are the facts. And we intend to delve into those facts as we sit with a panel of both government and labor representatives to dissect and make sense of the recently held Labor Day celebration in St. Patrick. Now, unlike previous Labor Day celebrations, the traditional jeering and booing that punctuated the Minister of Labor's speech was noticeably absent. Now, some may say that that is a metaphor for this administration's commitment to usher in an era of industrial peace in the country. Despite this harmonious and respectful tone of the celebrations, some issues still remain, and every single labor leader, while offering compliments to the administration on implementing some of their long-held concerns, also challenged them on a number of issues, including the slow pace of regularization, union busting or allegations of union busting, the slow walking of labor disputes before the labor commissioner, among others. And here to make sense of these issues are Labor Minister, Senator the Honorable Claudette Joseph, who is also the Minister for Consumer and Legal Affairs and the country's Attorney General, as well as Mr. Bert Patterson, who is the General Secretary of the Grenada Trade Union Council. We were also to be joined by Mr. Chris Diali, former private sector representative in the Senate, but unfortunately, Mr. Chris Diali indicated that he is not doing too well and is unable to join the panel. So at this point, I am happy to be joined by Senator the Honorable Claudette Joseph, as well as Mr. Bert Patterson, the General Secretary of the Grenada Trades Union Council. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, happy Mother's Day. Let us pay respect to our mothers. And let me thank you for appearing on the Bob Report this week.
You're welcome. It's good to be here, and in the seasonal greetings. Although my mother has passed, I would want to pay tribute to all the mothers of the state, because they have kept the state running a lot more than the fathers, if I may say so.
I would agree with that. I was raised by very powerful mothers and women in the community as well. Minister, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kellon. Good morning to you. Good morning, Bert. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Good morning also to all of the viewers and listeners of your program. And I would join with both of you in wishing all of our mothers of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique a very happy Mother's Day. I hope you are pampered and treated well by your children and extended families. But I would like to extend special greetings to my siblings, the mothers in my family, and of course, those in the constituency of the town of St. George, where my heart and soul is. So,
Yes.
happy Mother's Day to all of you. Do enjoy the day.
Absolutely. Now, panel, this year's International Workers' Day has as its backdrop the first minimum wage increase since 2011. I mean, this is just staggering. Now, and so let us begin by talking about the economic impact of that increase. Now, Mr. Diali, in a previous conversation that we had with him, indicated that there were still some private sector concerns around paying the workers that required minimum wage. But Minister Joseph, I want to begin with you because at the end of the day, the minimum wage should be impacting the working people of the country. Can you talk about how the government is measuring that economic impact?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bob. And I'm glad that you acknowledge that the fact that the minimum wages were not adjusted in 11 years as staggering. Indeed, it is staggering, and not only is it a staggering fact, it was a breach of the law by the previous NNP administration. Because, in fact, the last administration that did adjust the minimum wage in keeping with the law was the NDC administration led by Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas. We embarked on extensive study and consultations led by the chairman of the Wages Advisory Committee, Dr. Curlin Gilchrist, on what would be the best adjustment to make, keeping, bearing in mind the changes in the inflation rate since the minimum wages were last adjusted. As we see, the cost of a basket of goods, and a basket of goods does not only include food items, but it also includes necessary services, included utilities, um, such as electricity, telephone, internet service that is now a requirement for everyday living. And we came to the conclusion, based on the research, that based on the available data, a person earning anything under, I think it was $750, $800 a month, was below the poverty line in serious and dire streets in Grenada. I think 700 is base, considered to be in poverty. And we had thousands, the majority of workers, especially the workers who are covered by the minimum wages order, because the minimum wages are designed to cover mostly vulnerable categories of workers. And the vast majority of these workers were actually below the poverty line. Some were working for $500 a month, 600. Some lucky ones were working for 750 and 800, which was putting them still below the baseline. And 1200 $1,200, which is the average under the new minimum wages order, some a little more, is what was determined to be the rate at which the average worker will see an improvement and upward adjustment in their quality of life and standard of living, and would give them more disposable income that they can purchase more goods and services, and in turn help with the buoyancy and improvement in the economy generally. So, this is a nutshell we assess to be the impact. More Grenadians, more workers have more spending power because their minimum wage has increased. And I would want to see for the employers, minimum wage does not mean that's the rate at which you pay all your workers. Minimum wages suggest an entry level category of worker, not your experienced worker in the same category. So this is the impact we see on the economy, putting more in the hands of the people, improving on their disposable income so that they may support local businesses more.
Mhm.
And
Mr. Patterson, yeah, yes, Mr. Patterson, any qualms with what the minister articulated here? Are there limitations in respect of the implementation of the minimum wage that organized labor is concerned about?
Well, first, let me commend the government of Grenada, in that after 11 years, the government of Grenada only saw it fit to update the minimum wage act, and let me say that we being the spoilers we normally are, which is a duty that we're proud of, right?
The spoilers, I like that.
Spoilers, yes. We've always cried, even before the 2011 situation, we've always cried that the government must stick to the law and update the minimum wage. I think it is every 2 or 3 years in the
Yes.
act. It is really hard for the workers who are not unionized, and I want to stress the workers who are not unionized, because for those workers, the only time some of them get an increase, no matter what happens to inflation, the only time they get an increase is when the minimum wage is moved. So, for example, workers in the security sector, some workers in the agricultural sector, the only time they actually get an increase is after 11 years, where inflation might have gone up 40 or 50%, even if you take it 3 to 5% a year, and their wages are set, so they are continuously getting poorer. So, first, I want to commend the government on its action to update the minimum wage. As the spoilers always dare to say, there was one major issue which we were pretty disappointed in, and that is relating to the agricultural workers. Because although there was complete agreement at the level of the Wage Advisory Committee on bringing up the agricultural workers to, I think it was $12 an hour or $60 a day as a minimum, which is the way the past act was written. Some changes were made, which effectively means that some agricultural workers have had a reduction in their wage, because whereas it was mandated that the minimum time they could work in one day was 5 hours. If they work more, they would get more. But you couldn't employ somebody for 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day unless there was agreement by the parties, right? But what the new act did, and I must repeat, outside of the recommendations of the committee, the minimum wage advisory board or committee, was that it increased that. It was silent on that, which means that someone can work for the $60 a day, but they may have the.
I think we lost, but the, we'll just allow he's having some internet lag issues there. But Minister, you heard Mr. Patterson's concerns there about the agricultural workers, and so I want to pick up on that while the internet there adjusts itself. One, of course, the issue of the agricultural workers, but also around some other categories of workers, and those concerns has been raised in respect of some cooks and cleaners in schools. They work with the government of Grenada. Some of them indicated that they are still being paid the same. What is the reality there for that category of worker, and how, what is the government doing to ensure that you do have enforcement of best practices in respect of the minimum wage across all institutions?
Yes, so let me make a general comment.
Yes.
that from the perspective of the Ministry of Labor, from what we are seeing, the new minimum wages order is generally, the new minimum wages are generally implemented across all sectors. Um, we've had some lagging in some areas, while on the other hand, we had some entities implementing the minimum wages even as early as December 2023, before it came into effect in January. Now, in relation to the specific categories you mentioned, the cooks and cleaners in schools, all full time workers who are in categories that are referred to in the minimum wages order will be entitled to the new minimum wage. All categories of workers are entitled to the adjustment in their income based on the new minimum wages once they are full time workers. Um, and if part time workers and working by the day, you will be entitled to the rate prescribed in the legislation, the daily rate prescribed.
Hmm.
So that means, in relation to cooks and cleaners who are full time with the government of Grenada, there is nothing that should have prevented the timely implementation of the minimum wages. I want to say something to the unions. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with encouraging your members to be more diligent and productive. Because when government makes policy and passes legislation, it is for the workers employed with the government to implement those policies. So it is for the relevant finance officers, the relevant personnel at the different ministries to proceed to implement the minimum wages for all categories of workers to whom it applies. Because I can confirm for you, Helen, and your viewers, that government made the necessary allocations in the budget, in the national budget, to take care of everyone who would be entitled to an adjustment upward in their salary based on the new minimum wages order. So from the policy level, from governments and from cabinets end, there isn't any delay on our part in implementing the order. It is for the relevant personnel to, to be quite blunt, to do their jobs and to ensure that the new policy and legislation is applied. But what I can say to those people who might, and I don't think that obtains now still anymore, I do not think so. I've not heard that complaint in a while. I know initially maybe January, February, I don't think that's the case anymore. And in the case of government, whenever there is an arrears of any wages or remuneration owing, when government pays, you do get the lump sum. So you are made whole once that first payment is made. But I don't believe that that still is an issue. But if it is, that rests with the finance officers in the various
Well,
ministries to do their
well,
job.
there is also a school of thought that yes, the government has implemented a new policy without giving these ministries the capacity to implement those policies. So is it a case of that they're just not doing their jobs, or is it a case that uh, they need more manpower in order to implement those specific policies? And it's not only the minimum wage here, it also has to do in respect of the bi-monthly payments. There have been complaints that people have not been receiving their paychecks on time within that bi-weekly frame. So how do you rebut to that claim? How does the government rebut to the claim that you have not given them the tools to be able to efficiently implement those policies?
Well, I would say that this is not accurate. First of all,
Okay.
everything now, the system by which payments are made, that's digitized.
Hmm.
It's automated. So you don't need more human manpower to implement these payments.
Okay.
That's one. It's digital. And two, in relation to the bi-monthly payment, before it was implemented in April 2023, a painstaking process took place. And we were careful at the policy level to get clear indication and clarification from the officers who operate the system that they were ready, that all adjustments were in place, and that they are able to implement. Because we do not have a cash flow issue. So if it is not being implemented in a timely manner, that is because some level of efficiencies are affected or lacking, right? And I could say to you, ministers, for example, we are on the government payroll and we get paid the same day as public officers. And I have not received my salaries late. In fact, some public officers report that they get their payment, their salary early. So I think it is a false narrative that is put out there, particularly in relation to payment of salaries. It's a false narrative and it doesn't reflect the reality.
Mr. Patterson, you've been having some internet issues, but uh,
Yeah.
Madam Minister, you wanted to quickly add something because I wanted to go on to Mr. Patterson. Are you okay?
Well, you can go on to Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Patterson. The minister here is saying that you need to talk to your employees to whom much is given. Much is given here, meaning they have received the reward of pension. Regularization is happening. Pension reform is on the way. Proactive salary increases, in other words, is not retroactive. In other words, you are receiving salary increases into the future. All of these things are happening, so much is expected. Mr. Patterson, what say you?
There are a couple of myths in there that probably needs to be cleared up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't believe in magic, right? But the issue of productivity has always come up. No, I didn't hear all the minister said, right?
Yes.
Because I was having some problems.
Yes.
But the productivity of the workers, in particular the public sector workers, and generally workers in Grenada, have always come up. And it is not now. I can say who probably started it. One of my friends started it about 20-something years ago. And it always comes down to that somehow the trade unions are responsible for the issue of productivity. Let me just make it absolutely clear. The workers we represent pay us from somewhere around $15 a month, right? That goes up to more based on the income. They definitely don't pay us to be the chief proponents of productivity. Productivity is a function of management, be it in the government service or the private sector. It is a function, but like I say, for the past 20-24 years, I've been hearing with all speakers, all governments, that somehow it is the unions that their mandate is that of productivity. It is absolutely not a mandate of the union. In fact, what is responsible for that is just plain and simply bad management in the private and public sector. There's no way of saying this easy, right? So for example, you would hear that persons can't be disciplined in the public service, right? As one of the reasons. But let me say, any public servant who criticizes any government since 1967 have found themselves in Karakou or found themselves dismissed also, but you've never heard of a public servant being dismissed for not treating the public right, or for not doing what they're supposed to do, or for coming to work on time, etc. And that is a mandate of the management of the public service. It is not a mandate for the union. Let me be a little specific in the case I suspect that might have been said. And don't because it would have been said on other programs in recent times. The matter relating to delayed payment. I am telling you that prior to the election promise, which was to have 2 pay cycles per month rather than 1, when that was to go into effect, I think it would have been April 30th, 2023. During that period, improperly, none of the unions would have been consulted on the matter. I repeat, none of the unions would have been consulted on the matter. I can remember clearly that we at TUC had a meeting where it was discussed. That would have been about 3 weeks or so before it was to be implemented, right? And in that discussion, we indicated that none of us have been advised, checked, consulted with, etc. The following day, don't ask me how that occurred. The following day, we got an invitation, a hurried invitation to attend a meeting, which we didn't know who was on that meeting. And up to now, I don't know who was on and who was not on. Several persons from the Ministry of Finance and others one thing. One of the points we made, and we were very clear and are still clear, we have no objection to the cycle, the pay cycle, because it is the workers who have to like it, dislike it, reject it, or accept it. So we as unions have no opinion on that. The issue, one of the issues, and I'm saying that I personally raised, was that if you are going to have 2 pay cycles, so let us say government has 6,000 workers, right? And you had 1 pay cycle, I mean the votes clerk or the pay clerk, we used to call them votes clerk in the past, right? Would have to do 6,000 functions a month. With the 2 cycles, you now have to do 12,000 cycles. Not cycles, but 12,000 transactions. We said at that meeting that we see this as if you don't increase your staffing levels, there is no way that payments will be in time at all times. And we were literally laughed at, put it this way. But so now I'm hearing several ministers saying that the reason for this is because workers lazy. And that is so far. In fact, at a following meeting, the senior members of the Ministry of Finance indicated to us that some workers were working up to 12 and 1 o'clock at night to be able to meet this requirement. And no, I don't know if the government ministers don't hear of these issues or people are afraid to raise them with them, but it is just obvious. And how can you blame the workers whose workload would have been increased by probably 100%? How can you blame them as being lazy when people like myself predicted that must happen? So I hear it's a crop out. It's a crop out. We don't manage properly, so blame the union. And it is not only in this case, and not only by this government, but it is an automatic response now that blame the union for productivity. It is not our mandate. You have to manage the place properly, and don't put that on us. We are not paid. We are paid by our workers to seek betterment for them. We always speak to productivity because when there's productivity, we can ask for more. So let me be absolutely frank about that.
Very well. Let us give the minister a right of reply. Sure. Minister.
I excuse Mr. Patterson because his internet was giving some trouble, so he probably didn't hear what I said. But just for the benefit of your viewers, particularly those who might have joined while Mr. Patterson was speaking, I never said, neither anyone in our government has ever said that workers are lazy. That's not what was said.
It has been said.
Don't cut me when I'm speaking, so.
Sorry, but it has been said.
3-4 minutes.
Yes.
All right. So it was never said on this program, and I've never heard any of my colleagues say it or accused of saying it, that workers are lazy. what Mr. Patterson didn't hear, I say. I said, one, prior to the implementation of first of all, the narrative that salaries are being paid late is false. That's not true. And I will make bold to challenge anyone who allege that they have been paid late to prove it, to show that they have been paid late, because it is untrue. That's point one. Point two, prior to the implementation of the bi-monthly payments, painstakingly, work was done with the officials at the Ministry of Finance, and perhaps that was the point at which they might have worked late into the night. And government did duly recognize and reward them for that effort. To make the changes to the system so that there could be a smooth rollout of the bi-monthly payment. The rollout only occurred after those who had to operate the system confirmed that they were ready, and this could happen without a glitch or without glitches and on time. It is only after government was satisfied that those who had to operate the system were comfortable with the implementation that we proceeded to implement. And thirdly, the system is fully automated. So you do not need additional human manpower. There isn't 6,000 entries being made. And mind you, I know it's going to be relevant for another point coming up. It's more like 8,000 people in the working in the public sector, in the government service, not six. So there isn't 8,000 entries being manually made. It's an automated system. So rather than the automated system kicking in once a month as previously obtained, it now kicks in twice monthly, and all of the necessary changes were made for that to happen. So there isn't somebody sitting and having to manually enter each person's pay. That would have required additional manpower as such. So this is the situation. I think we are making a mountain out of a molehill here, because we are speaking of a situation that actually does not exist.
But okay.
Except Mr. Patterson, quickly, because we have to get on to the other points, and I want to respect your time. But quickly,
no, if I may respond to that directly,
yes.
Everything I refer to, because I'm not a functionary of the ministry or in any way, I would have heard reports myself on the, and it was not the report that I'm just hearing, that there would have been some hitches and some late payments. I would have heard that. I would have heard that reported in the press, and I would have heard more than one minister indicate that the issue was an issue of low productivity. I won't go into calling names, but absolutely that was reported in the press by ministers of government, that it was an issue. The issue might have been, in fact, it went on to say that it would have been persons tied to the past regime being disruptive. And I heard that said by ministers of government. So I just want to clear that up. I am not saying what I know because I work at the ministry. I'm saying what was reported in the press. And if we have the time, I can get the excerpts from the press that said so. So
I really wish we had the time. I really wish.
Quickly, get the
yes.
excerpt that says lazy.
I'll attempt and send it directly to you, Madam Minister.
And please send it to her in your next meeting that you have together as tripartite groups. But Mr. Patterson, now let us talk about the regularization. Now, I've listened with warped interest to every speech.
Sorry, I don't want to control your interview or so, but there was one matter that Brother Bert mentioned that I don't think I addressed at
You
all.
responded. Yes, please go ahead and do
Maybe
that quickly.
to do that.
Yes,
The agricultural workers in the new minimum wages order.
yes.
The what obtained prior was that a day work in the case of agricultural workers was a minimum of 5 hours a day. If they work more, that would have been an arrangement between them and the employer, and there might have been some overtime paid, etc. 5 hours a day. The Employment Act defines a day work as 8 hours, an 8 hour day work. That's what every worker in Grenada is subject to. And if they work for more than 8 hours a day, they would be entitled to overtime. Of course, in some instances, management and so do not attract overtime, but that would be special arrangement between the company and its employees. We have always touted agriculture as one of the mainstays of our economy, and one area that needs greater injections, whether it's injection of labor, technology, resources. The thinking is that if we are going to say continue to maintain that agriculture is one of our mainstays and we are going to be driving the agricultural sector more, what would be the justification for having a work day in the agricultural sector at 5 hours and say a work day in the construction sector at the same 5 hours, considering that both categories of work are fairly laborious? In fact, in some instances, based on what the agricultural worker does, the construction worker's work is more laborious. So the thinking was that let it be a day. The rate is per day, and the employer and the employee may make their own arrangements as to what the day will entail. Because the maximum, not the minimum, the maximum is 8 hours. Let the employer and the employee agree on what the day will entail. It might be 5.5 hours, it might be 6 hours, it might be 5 hours. As I understand, my information is that in most instances, most employees and employers in the agricultural sector have maintained the 5 hour workday. But the flexibility, we thought, should be given to let the provisions of the Employment Act apply to all categories of workers. And it's as simple as that.
Very well. Now, Mr. Patterson, quickly, and then we'll get to the next question. Go ahead, sir, if you wanted to quickly
No, I'm
respond.
saying intent may be one thing, but what has happened, in fact, that these workers have had, based on the new act, some reduction in their hourly rate, or the hourly rate has not moved. So I hear the intent, and the intent may be good, but what has happened, all other workers would have had an increase in their rate of pay. In the case of agricultural workers, they would not have had an increase, because although it moved from 50 something dollars or 48 dollars to some $35 to $60, when divisible by 8 instead of 5, you would do the maths yourself. All right, you would see what and that is what it is on the ground. So as I said, we're looking for it to be corrected, and you may want to correct it by adding more to ensure that persons may, if agreed by the employer, work for 8 hours instead of 5. But cutting cane grass up at Maran, it's not a feasible issue to cut cane grass from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Whereas you may say well, let me don't use that, but let me say where they're not being as productive as we. But even if they're you want them to be more productive, you can't reduce their pay. Simple as that.
Mhm. Now, very well. So we have to go on, lady and gentlemen. Now, there are those in the public sector who say public sector, meaning the unionized public workers now, who say that the process of regularization is a bit slow. In fact, that was articulated in the Labor Day addresses, and there was that interesting back and forth between Mr. Grimes and the minister. And the minister, when the minister came up to address the workers, she had to challenge your brother trade unionist to get his facts straight. But all of those rhetorical volleys aside, Mr. Patterson, I'm not going to speak for the government, but the government would say that the process has begun and that it has to be a phased approach. In fact, the permanent secretary in the Department of Public Administration in that press conference that they published late last year, spoke about the first phase in looking at people who are in acting, temporary, on assignment, and probationary status, which will be followed by a second phase that would look at people holding public service contracts, contracts of service, daily paid, and people holding ministry letters. And with the final phase looking at the people holding contracts for service and Imani trainees. What limitations does the union see with this approach? And does your bellicose rhetoric on Labor Day comport or not comport with that approach that the government would say is reasonable? Mr. Patterson?
All right. Words do have meaning, right?
Yes.
And some of us in the industry I'm related to, when we say things or we hear things, we take them absolutely seriously. Number one, the present prime minister, right, has said prior to elections, and let me say there is some history on this matter with the present prime minister when he was in the private sector, that the employment of persons in permanent positions in any sort of precarious contract is illegal. So let's start with that.
And
So
he also mentioned regularizing with the stroke of a pen. Let's also
yes,
not forget
yes,
that.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Go ahead,
And
please.
he did mention that because at last he agreed with me that it was illegal, right? Because we would have had other discussions in the private sector. And our argument has always been that it is absolutely illegal based on Section 29.5. And I was so pleased to hear him agree with us at last that it is illegal. And it has to be corrected by the stroke of a pen because this is an illegality. It is not something that we just want to do. It is an illegality. No. When after elections, we started hearing different things, right? That prior to regularization, there would have to be assessments done and all that. No, those persons are still working. So let me say, in the workers I represent, and I am related to TAU. So workers in vector control and workers in other departments where I work, where you have the majority of workers who have replaced workers who have retired are now under these contracts. They have not been made permanent. In fact, some of them under the last government would have been paying the NIS on their own, which is absolutely illegal. So not only were they being employed in an illegal framework, but they were actually forced to pay the NIS on their own, which is completely illegal. And I'm saying, when you say things, I take it seriously. And we expected, let me just say, we expected, because remember, those workers are still being paid. This is not you going to employ additional people. These workers, like in vector control, they are the persons who go and spray the mosquitoes so we won't get bitten and we won't get all the diseases from mosquitoes. These people are still working under the same conditions, have not been regularized, right? So I could only speak to that. No, I hear the government said that they've regularized 300 or so workers, and I wouldn't know because they haven't communicated to us directly, which is something this government is doing. we should be communicated to directly. We have not been communicated to directly on this matter. I'm not sure if the other unions would have been communicated to directly, but I'm saying that whether it is in the hospital or whether it is in vector control or whether it's in other areas, and these are essential services, the majority of these workers, I can give you the numbers, I think it's 3,600 and something of them have not been regularized. And now it has changed to that we have to do some discussions and some work, not with the union, because the union is not involved in those discussions as to how they're going to be regularized. That is not what I heard. And as I say, we take words extremely serious because the people who pay us, when we say something, they expect us to stand by.
They expect representation. As a former as former member of TAU, yes, I paid my union dues when I was a part of TAU. But let me bring in
demand representation.
And of course, I demanded representation. Yes, absolutely.
No, I'm saying I can
yes, absolutely. Based on the rhetoric of the Prime Minister, the stroke of a pen, Minister of Labour, Honourable Minister of Labour, was that an unforced rhetorical error on the part of your boss, Dr. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, for him to say with the stroke of a pen he's going to regularize all workers? And in hindsight, was that a reckless thing to say, given the painstaking and slow process of regularization? And in fact, we cannot, as you articulated, we cannot regularize everybody in the way that when you were on the campaign trail that you wanted to, because as you said, that will bankrupt the government. And in fact, Dr. Mitchell, former Prime Minister Dr. Mitchell, also said so. Over to you.
First of all, Kellogg, I've never heard Dr. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell say that this can be done at the stroke of a pen. I think I saw a video once where another colleague might have uttered similar words, but I've not heard those words.
Well, I guarantee you he said so. Okay, he said so.
I take your word for
in
it.
In the campaign, okay, yes.
So assuming that he did say so.
Yes.
Let me give you some facts. And you know, all of the posturing and the rhetoric and so, that doesn't really, these things don't really help us. And the penchant to stay in the old mold, we are now in a period of industrial peace and stability. But there are some who are drawn to the old mold of contention and chaos and friction. And we can't move forward if we stay in that mode. So this is why government took certain decisive steps, all benefiting workers, from payment of restoration of pension and gratuity to dock salaries to the best negotiated package for salaries and fringe benefits that they've had. Some of these fringe benefits for some of these workers didn't take place in 10 years, according to Brother Grimes. So there's no doubt whatsoever that this government is employee friendly and takes good care of its workers, be it occupational safety and health, honorariums for people who go the extra mile, increase in salary, pension and gratuity, taking care of everyone. That's without a doubt. Now we have 4,700 plus persons working for government to whom this whole regularization exercise will apply. 4,700. Just a little over half of the people who are employed with the government, because there are about 4,200 or so who are established and permanent, and we don't have to deal with them in terms of regularization. So the other 50+% regularization will have to apply to them. Now, once regularized, there's a process that was developed to which the union offered no demur, as far as I am aware. We promised in the first phase that ended in December 2023 to regularize 300 in the first phase. 298 were regularized, 187 in the mainstream public service, 111 in the teaching service. So, as I said on Labor Day, anyhow you're going to score government on that performance, we will have to get an A. We promised 300, we delivered 298. I really, Kellogg, I really trying to understand what all the complaints and noise is about coming from the unions, right? The 300, the 298 were regularized. It took a stroke of a pen to regularize them, but a process must take place before. Don't we agree that the phased approach must happen? Could we just, without following a set procedure, and as P.S. Marshall explains every time she speaks in public, a
But
phased
she appeared on the Bub Report and also said that. Yes.
hold on. There are different categories of people working in the government. You have the unestablished one, those who may have a PSC temporary letter. You have the contracts for service. You have the PSC contracts. You have the contracts, not you have of. Then you have the contracts for who are treated as independent contractors, and in many respects they are independent contractors. Then you have the Imanis, right? And they all, you would have to treat with all of them as you do the phases differently. Consider their positions. Some people are in positions that they are not qualified for. Some people are doing work that is not on the establishment, so they have to be post-creation. So there's a lot that has to happen. What I would encourage workers to do is to upgrade yourself, keep upgrading and qualifying yourself to put you so that you are in the best position to be settled in a post in the service when your phase comes around. And I think this is the kind of language, this is what the union should be encouraging their workers to do, right? So I don't think anybody reasonably would expect just a sign off for 4,700 people. And we call that regularization. We are regularized. There was no disagreement on the 300 we said we were going to do in the first phase. We did 298. What are you complaining about, Mr. TUC? What is
let us give him the right to reply, Mr. Patterson.
Let me respond. First of all,
yes.
These numbers, and as I say, from sitting here, it's never been communicated, which is a style of this government, I must say. All that should be done in discussions with the union. So I sitting here don't know where these 300 workers come from. There was no agreement or decision as to when, how, etc. So we hear it in the news, like everybody else, like you, Dr. Bob, hear it in the news, which is absolutely not proper, first of all. Secondly, I want to say, because the minister indicated that she doesn't understand where the contention and friction is coming from. Let me just say, you yourself, Dr. Bob, observed that there was no booing at the May Day celebrations of the minister this year.
The second time in many years.
Hold on.
Madam Minister, let him finish. Madam Minister, let him finish, please.
So put it this way. You have to say the government is relatively new and they're getting somewhat of a pass. But our duties as unions being paid to represent workers is to hold the persons that be, and we see the government not as political entities, but as employers in what I'm speaking about now. We have to hold them accountable for whatever the workers are dissatisfied with. So whether, and I can see some people might not be generally the trade unions in this last election. So in fact, the government probably got into power because of the support from the trade unions. and I dare say so. Some of my own members may disagree with me, but that is a fact. And they were let me say, they were campaigned to, and it succeeded, and there's no difficulty. But you see, we have a history, and our history is that when E.M. Gary was in power, we know Gary as one of the strongest unionists in Grenada. There were unions who he employed who definitely fought him on issues. The revolution, Cement fought the revolution based on matters on the docks, even if they may have been supporters of that government. There were unions that supported the NNP government from time to time. But we never gave up because that is our mandate. So the minister shouldn't feel special that although some matters may have been addressed, that we will just stay and keep quiet. We won't, right? We won't go away like that. And I'm saying that it is their duty as an employer to sit with us and have discussions. Now, to me, what the minister is saying might make a good bit more sense to me if these were people who have to be employed. So I have been employed in a particular department at the hospital for the past 15 years, right? I have been employed illegally because it is in a permanent position. You don't have to tell me every morning, come to work tomorrow, don't come to work tomorrow. And that is clearly by 29.5 illegal. So no, you cannot tell me, because it is not persons that government has to go out and employ. And then you can't tell me that I've been doing this job for 15 years. And now you're telling me I would have to upgrade myself before being employed permanently to do that job. That is craziness. Because I have been employed for 15 years. I have been performing. I have not been sent home. Even if I could have been sent home by the wave of a hand, because I'm not a permanent, well, you didn't treat me as a permanent employee, right? And from government to government, they just change people, right? But I'm being employed for the past 15 years doing that function, and I'm an ambulance driver. I'm doing that function. You want to tell me no, that in order for the government to abide by the law and make me permanent, then I have to go through some process, or they had to evaluate me? Absolutely not. And that would be fought. Because one, it's illegal, and two, it's absolutely unfair to the persons who hold those positions. Now, if there's not work for them, you send them home. I'll be absolutely frank. So if they're sitting in the hospital doing nothing, they should not be there. But once they're doing functions that make the government work, because it is those people, not the ministers, that make government work. It is these people that make the government work. So it's not the Minister of Health that makes the hospital run. It is these people who are there for the last 15 years, who have been working, driving the ambulance, doing whatever for the past 15 years, who make the hospital work. And therefore, for you to tell me no, that in order to abide by the law and make them permanent, you have to go through some process to evaluate and see if they should be holding the job or if there's work for them. No, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if I'm too slow to make sense of that, but absolutely that doesn't make sense to me. And then the big issue, you need to engage the unions on these matters. It is, I'm coming to believe it is not an error or mistake. And it was spoken about at meeting that the unions are not consulted on these matters as an employer, and government is an employer. Once you operate within a bargaining unit, you cannot do these things without consulting the union involved. So sorry for being long-winded on that, but I don't see it any balanced way. I see it as abide by the law and tell me nothing else.
Well, Minister, I'll give you a quick right to reply, but we do have to get to, and I want to respect your time as well. But I'm sure that those conversations you would probably have in the Ministry of Labor as well. I'm sure you have those conversations.
Kellon is only for the benefit of the viewers who may take away some of what Mr. Patterson is saying as correct, I feel compelled to reply, to be quite honest. Because,
Yes.
first of all, the whole idea of consulting with the unions were consulted. When we get to pension, I'll tell you, the pension reform, I'll tell you how the unions have been behaving to many invitations to be part of the process. On regularizations, the union were consulted, the unions were met with. Now, we are an employer, right? Treating with our workers, individual by individual. So I really don't know. Each person who gets regularized is an individual case of a worker with an employer. So it really beats me what Mr. Patterson is being so vociferous about in terms of regularization and consultation. There were extensive consultation on the process, the procedure, and as Mr. Grimes said, we, meaning the unions, were told or were promised 300 in the first phase, and we were happy with this, and we are only seeing a fraction. And of course, that's not accurate, right? So I don't know what Mr. Patterson I really don't know what he's speaking of in terms of they need to be consulted on. What more do you need to be consulted? The process you were consulted on, how we're going to go ahead, and it is happening. The regularizations are happening, employee by employee, right? So I really didn't come in this period of peace where it is a fact and it was evident based on the response from all of the workers, all of the various unions, teachers, public workers, TAU, based on the response to myself as Minister of Labour, the Prime Minister and my colleagues who attended the May Day celebrations, they are extremely happy. And I think what needs to happen is that the union should get on the same page with their members so that we can work together. What we want to do now is to work together to improve our climate in Grenada more and more, to bring greater benefits to all of us so that the workers ultimately can benefit. That is why in the Ministry of Labour, we have initiated and rekindled the relationship with the International Labour Organization, which was non-existent for 25 years. As a result of this, the unions, the employers, and government, the tripartite arrangement, are already benefiting from training initiated by the Ministry of Labour. We could only do these additional things until take these steps that would take us to the other level if we have industrial peace and harmony. We will be bogged down if we keep fighting about every little thing and making issues or non-issues. We would be bogged down and not be able to take our country and the workers of our country to the other level.
Well, Minister, what I would say is historically there has always been an adversarial relationship between labor, media, and government. It's historically the case. So I don't think. Well, you may say so, but unions do have, and I'm not to represent. I hold no water for any of the unions here. But that's the point. That's the point. But that's the point.
You fight when there's a cause. You don't fight for fighting.
Should be treated special. But
yeah. So let us go on. But let us go on. Let us go on to another very critical issue now. And I Minister Joseph, and I want to respect your time, but I'm sure former Prime Minister Dr. Mitchell is saying, "I told you so," of your government's desire to proceed with pension reform and the challenges that exist around proceeding with union pension reform. That is, after all, both of your governments are saying the same thing in respect of the approach to pension reform. So where are we in respect to that process? Let us talk about, one, the legislation that will inform the process, and two, again, to Mr. Brathwaite, I said Mr. Patterson. Again, that's a Freudian slip of thinking of Dr. Bert Brathwaite. And your first name is Bert. I do apologize. In jest, okay. I don't want to be sued, okay, Dr. Brathwaite. But the point is, What will that process look like? And Mr. Patterson, once the minister responds, I want to know what sacrifices you as the union would want to make, and what contribution you are going to make to this very critical conversation around contributory pension reform. Minister Joseph?
Yes, thank you, Kellan. On the issue of pension, we have a current regime which was brought into force in 1958 when the public service was less than 300 strong. And that has endured partly because it was in abeyance for 40 years. Pension and gratuity was in abeyance for 40 years. 1983 to 2022. Only persons who joined the public service prior to April 4th, on or before April 4th, 1983, automatically qualified for pension. Everybody else who joined the public service after that were disqualified from their constitutional right to pension, because the Constitution enshrines the right to pension in Section 92. Successive governments, from the first time this matter was brought before the court in 1998 by Mr. McQueen, and the court struck down the 1983 law as unconstitutional. So from 1998 to 2022, all governments knew that the law that was passed in 83 to disqualify persons from pension was unconstitutional. And nobody, no government, actively restored pension. The only government prior to this one that made some attempt to put things in place to restore pension was the Tillman Thomas administration, based on what we discovered on assuming office, because they had a study done and they were working it out. The governments led by the former Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, deliberately did not pay pension. In fact, lied to the nation to say that the whole country would go bankrupt. It is over 450 million. I think it was 465 was the figure he gave. If we pay the pension, it would cost 465 million in retroactive pension and gratuity, and gave every reason in the book why the workers should not be made whole with their constitutional right to pension. We know the history. The workers had to take the government to court 3 times. Mr. McQueen, Ms. Hermelin Armstrong, and then the unions together brought the government to court. And the judgment was delivered a few months before we assumed office. 11 days after assuming office, we met and consulted with all of the affected unions. Only 11 days after. Shortly thereafter, we presented a plan to the unions. And in November 2003, only 4 or 5 months in office, we actually paid the retroactive pension, which totaled just over $75 million, not 465, as the people were lied to before. Mind you, before that, there was a MOU signed on the eve of the 2018 election in which the unions, they want to talk about union busting, the unions literally signed away the constitutional pension rights of their workers. So in a sense, it was a blessing that the government ultimately reneged on that, because what they did is basically to sign away the rights of the workers. We now have an established public service of around 4,200 people, and then another 4,700 looking to be regularized. And a system, a pension scheme non-contributory, where government pays all the pension, designed with a public service that was less than 300 people. So you see what we're talking about, Kelon. Added to that, almost in every other construct, especially in the modern era, pension schemes are contributory. Like the NIS is contributory. So the employee pays some, the employer pays some. And in engaging in pension reform, all of the conventional wisdom and the advice suggests that to proceed after regularization with the scheme that we have now, that was not designed for a 4, 7, 8,000 strong, is going to be economically unsustainable, right? Now, unlike our predecessors, we are doing something. We are going to fix it. The people, the 4,000 plus people who are already in this system, confirmed in the service, we cannot interfere with their pension rights. And that's the advice that I have given to my government as Attorney General. Because when you examine the Section 92 and the Pension Act, we can't interfere with the people who are already confirmed in the service. So we will have to continue paying the pension until all of these people are cleared out. The actuaries, the specialists have told us it will take about 60 years based on the youngest person confirmed. So the old pension scheme will be with us for the next 60 or so years, where government will be paying all the pension. But we don't want to leave the other 4,700 people without a pension, as the previous administration has done. We need to design a scheme so that everybody will live comfortably on retirement. And so what we are proposing is in line with modern realities and will be more sustainable, where government as employer makes a contribution and the employee makes a contribution. And at the end of the day, on retirement or on leaving the service, the employee benefits from the pension scheme. Because in fact, in some respects, the new scheme that has been designed will actually have some advantages over the existing one. And that's the case. So for example, employees will be able to benefit earlier under the new scheme, the new contributory scheme, than employees will benefit under the existing pension scheme. So we must design something. There must be a period at which we say, if you join the service on or after a specified date, just as the Disqualification Act did, the new scheme will apply to you. As I said, we can't interfere with the people who are already in the service. The Constitution says we can't. Their pension rights are secured and they are under the existing scheme. But as I said, there are some pluses and benefits and positives in the proposed new scheme that you may even find a few people, based on the circumstances and so, who are under the existing scheme opting to join the new one instead. Right?
So that is what we will be seeing.
Yes. So let me tell you something. All stakeholders, a pension reform committee was set up, headed by Dr. Curlin Gilchrist and including Deputy Permanent Secretary Finance, Ms. Siobhan Britton, Ms. Janine Bernard, who is one of the legal drafters and lawyers at the AG's chambers, P.S. Marshall, I can't remember the other person, and the Trade Unions Council were invited. There was a seat, a position for the Trade Unions Council to be on the Pension Reform Committee. They never took up that seat, despite repeated invitations. The composition of the committee included a space for the Trades Union Council. They never took up that seat at the table and speak on behalf of the members. They silenced their own voice. What was done, however, in the consultations, the unions were met with. The individual unions who comprise or who represent public sector workers were consulted. There were meetings with them. And so through that route, the voices of the workers through their respective unions were heard. But the TUC opted not to participate in the work of the Pension Review Committee as invited by government. When the new scheme is rolled out, we are satisfied. We are satisfied that the workers will embrace the scheme. We are satisfied that they will embrace the scheme, and mainly because, as I said, it's a good scheme. It offers advantages, some advantages over the existing one. Both will have advantages and disadvantages. And the option for workers would be nothing as obtained from 83 to 2022 for everybody. We've done what is constitutionally right for those persons who are already confirmed. But there's no constitutional obligation by government in relation to people who are not confirmed. And as we regularize people, we want to make sure that they are whole, they have security of tenure, and they have a pension on retirement. And that is what the new scheme is about. The old scheme simply cannot sustain a pension, a public sector 7,000 plus strong. It's just not possible. And I guess that's why, one of the reasons why the previous administration didn't tackle it. But we are different. We don't shy away from making hard decisions. And so we are going to implement a new pension scheme so that all public sector workers will have pension on retirement.
Yes, Mr. Patterson, here in respect of, and the earlier question before the minister responded, how do you intend to be part of this process? The minister indicated that a seat was offered to the umbrella TUC, but that you did not take up an offer to sit on that seat. So are you going to commit here on the Bub Report, sir, that in the next meeting, the TUC will have a representative there, Mr. Patterson?
Lots of things before we get there.
Right? Yes, sir.
Lots of things before we get there. First of all, from just listening to the minister, it appears to me that a decision has already been made, and that has just been said. Right? Now, matters relating to workers' benefits can't be made in that way without discussions. That's the first observation.
But except you were not there for the discussions, according to the minister.
Hold on a minute.
Yes, go ahead.
No, there's discussion, consultation, and negotiations. In matters relating to workers' benefits, it is not consultation, it is discussions and negotiations, because other than the 1958 pension, we have several agreements where existing now, there are pension arrangements and past service arrangements that are in our memorandum of agreements. So that is the first observation. Okay? Right. Secondly, let me address the issue of the committee. Immediately on receiving invitation to be part of this committee, we immediately wrote to the chairperson of the committee and asked one simple question. With the discussions that are going to be held, include any changes to the ruling of the court? A most legitimate question that should be easy to answer. Yes or no? So in other words, we wrote on several occasions indicating prior to us appointing anybody to this committee, we need to know something about its terms of reference and if any changes are intended to be made to the ruling of the court, because there is a ruling of the court relating to the constitutionality of pension. That's just a fact that we can't change. We were never responded to. I want to repeat, up to this day, we have not been responded to on that matter. So we saw it not fitting for us to sit on a committee where the major item, this committee was not prepared to say what the major item that is of concern to us. And if you were to listen to the teachers union and the other unions during the Labor Day celebrations, you would hear why. If the ruling of the court is going to be interfered with. Okay? So that is the legitimate reason why we did not participate, because the persons who organized this was not prepared to tell us exactly what we were there to speak about. Plain and simple. Okay? So I hope that answers that part of the question. No.
Yes, the second part.
Right. No. The minister indicated that in 2018, the unions, in fact, did sign a memorandum of understanding, right? Which, following the election of 2008, where the government won all 15 seats, it was completely reneged on. Let me say, that memorandum of agreement was extremely similar to what this government is now speaking to. I want to repeat, was extremely similar to what this government is speaking to. And I have the facts, I have the figures, I was part of that discussion. Okay? And it was reneged on because of the issue of the lump sum that was to be paid by the government, right, to the workers, where it is 25% no, and since 1958 they wanted to bring it to 2%. So that was the hitch, right? Following that, we then went back to court, and the unions won in the courts to say that the 1958 pension is a constitutional right to workers in the service, which means that as of now, that is the ruling that stands, because it was not appealed. Okay? No. When we got to, and words, I don't think I can repeat this too much, words do have meaning. When the government of the past indicated that this pension matter will cost them $600 and something million in retroactive pay, we knew it was a joke. We said so publicly, right? We were joined by this then party campaigning to be in power, that this is affordable. That is not the amount, but pension is affordable. The past government was saying it was not affordable. I want to repeat, this government that is now in power during the campaign was saying it is the last government that is wicked, and that pension, there was no discussion during that period about pension reform. During the campaign, there was no discussion about pension reform. What was said is that the unions had sold out to the past government, all right? That's prior to the ruling by the High Court, and that we could afford it, and it is only the wickedness on the part of the past government. And we listened and we agreed. I want to repeat, we listened and we agreed. It is most disingenuous to come now to tell us that after, and let me say, a lot of public servant voters voted for the present government because of that. There was no talk about reform, that they would reinstitute and they would pay the 1958 pension.
And follow the ruling of the court.
And follow the ruling of the court. It wasn't in hidden language. Yes. So I don't have the ability to change my mouth, because the people that I represent they'll vote, well, they'll take turns at me, right? Only to find that once the government got into power, it started speaking the same language that it had said we sold out to. So if we sold out then, then to get into a matter of pension reform now, which is extremely similar. In fact, the actuary that is doing the work is the same actuary. Let me just repeat. The actuary, someone I know very well. I have encountered this person in other areas, and I know very well. So it is the same actuary that did the work then that is doing the work now. And extremely similar what was proposed then and what is proposed now. So if I had sold out to accept it under the Keith Mitchell administration, won't I be selling out now to accept it under this administration? The other thing that is extremely important, and we don't know how the unions are going to address it, what it means, and because we are unions, we are obligated to treat everyone the same. What it means is that persons who, sorry, if you hear noise, where I am, there's the jetliners passing. So let me just hold.
You're close to the airport. That's all right. That's all right.
Right.
Yes, we can still hear you. Go right ahead.
Right. Those jet blues disturb me a lot, even 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Right.
Those diaspora people keeping you awake at night.
You're according to me, all.
Right, Minister? The diaspora people.
So
Yes.
Here our greatest problem.
Yes.
What is being suggested, were it to be accepted, would mean that a worker who would have entered the service at the 31st of December 2023, right, would have a full pension paid for by government. But a worker who entered the service on the 2nd of January 2024 will have a complete, although doing the same job on the same desk, right, having literally the same years of service, would have a completely different pension matter and pension benefit. And how do we, as trade unions who represent all, say we represent one, but we're not representing the other? That is one of the grave difficulties, which the government is not important to the government, but it is important to us because of our paying clientele. Right? How do we sell that to our workers? That and the other thing that I'm not sure how the government is going to do it, because the Constitution speaks to establish workers. It means that the establishment of workers or established workers may have to be done away with. No, I'm not sure if that is constitutionally proper or not. I'm not a lawyer like your other guest, Sister Claudette. And sorry, I refer to her as Sister Claudette. Yeah? So I am not sure how it's going to be dealt with. But you would not be able to employ somebody in a permanent and established role and not give them the 1958 pension. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this because this might be arms and ammunition for when the discussions actually start. Because as far as I'm concerned,
well, you certainly don't want to negotiate. You certainly don't want to negotiate on the Bob report.
We need to be. In other words, this matter needs to be negotiated. Let me see.
Yes, absolutely.
Several entities have passed. Governments and entities have passed, which decides we're going to ram something through. I am feeling this in this case, where we have to sit and have discussions, and the discussions should entail everything, because it would mean that some of my present labor agreements that I have would have to be drastically changed. So, for example, the persons in the unestablished positions who now they don't have a pension, but they have a past service benefit, which they don't pay towards. Much like a lot in the private sector, like Grenada Breeze, Grabland Concrete, a lot of others, right? This would mean that they will now have to pay into some pension or past service benefit, which to me can't be done without discussions and negotiations. It is not a consultation here. It is not saying we're doing that. These things have to be negotiated, and it is apparent that the government doesn't really realize that. I don't know how they're not realizing that. No, they could go and change the law and make law to break law. That could be done. That has never been the proper way, has never worked. And there's a lot of history of that in Grenada. So I would well advise against treating this issue like we in power and we could do what we want. And I'm getting that feel when it comes to addressing these labor matters, which are labor matters and which needs to be negotiated and negotiated above the table, not by public statements.
Absolutely. And Mr. Patterson, we are certainly running out of time. I think we have that there is a lot that has been articulated here in respect of this pension issue. But I'm sure the minister, I know that you do have another engagement, but certainly this is a space that we will be watching because, again, as it has been articulated, actuarial reports have articulated, pension reform has to be critical. Because in many respects, a non-contributory, yes, go ahead, Minister.
Sorry to cut across. My sincerest apology.
I wanted to respect your time. That's why I wanted to go on to quickly get to the next issue. But if you wanted to respond.
Right. I don't think I could allow Mr. Patterson to have the last word on this, so to speak.
Okay. All right. So go ahead.
Listened to him just now, and he made the perfect case for why the TUC ought to have taken up the seat offered to them on the table so that they could be part of the conversation, a conversation which is still ongoing. They need to take up the seat offered on the table. And perhaps some free advice, Mr. Patterson, in taking up the seat, perhaps you may repeat the same question you asked in writing that you didn't get an answer to. You may start by asking that same question. But it is, to me, don't cut me off, sir.
Let the minister finish there.
It seems to me reckless, quite frankly, that on a matter such as this, the union, the TUC has chosen not to participate, instead opting to making uninformed public pronouncements, many of which have no basis on merit. Now, let me just clarify something again for the listeners, because when the unions speak, people listen. And it is plainly inaccurate for the union rep to be here equating the pension reform proposed now to what was signed in March 2018 and reneged on. Completely different matters. Completely different. As I said, what was signed in 2018 that the government reneged on signed away the rights of existing confirmed public workers, which is why it was so disadvantageous to the people to whom it applied. Remember, in those days, until the NDC started speaking about regularization, there was no conversation about regularization of contract and temporary workers. We started that conversation. So the MOU related to established workers who are entitled to their full pension in accordance with the 1958 law, as the court ultimately correctly decided. And that is what we restored 5 months after coming into office. We are now speaking to persons who are not yet confirmed. The reform we are speaking about will apply to persons who are not yet confirmed in the public service. And I don't want there to be a confusion between Section 84 of the Constitution, which speaks to how persons are confirmed in the public service, and Section 92, which speaks to pension. You only become eligible to pension after you are confirmed in the public service in accordance with Section 84 of the Constitution. You may be a government worker, but if you are not appointed in the service or confirmed in the service in accordance with Section 84 of the Constitution, you are not entitled to any pension. And that is the situation with over 4,700 government workers right now, which is what we are trying to fix, which is what we are trying to remedy with regularization and pension reform. So please don't be so irresponsible and to sound as an opposition party as opposed to an impartial labor union, as an opposition party to be
unions.
We are never impartial. We are absolutely
unions are not supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to represent their workers.
Partial to your members. Partial to your members, not to the narrative of an opposition political party.
But
and
let
if
me
you're
respond.
partial to your members, I think I was supposed to have the last word on this. We're supposed to go on to the
next. Yes, we do. But Mr. Bradford, maybe you need to. Maybe you need. Yes. Well, maybe.
Party.
Yes. Mr. Brathwaite, please bring those up in the meeting that you expected to attend. That's on pension reform.
Well,
let us. No, Mr. Brathwaite. Mr. Patterson, there I go calling you Mr. Brathwaite again. We really have to take a quick break to come back to close the program. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We'll be right back after this. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bub Report. We go there.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Of course, this was a long one, but that's what we do here on the Bub Report. We try to delve deeper and go further on the issues that articulate national conversations in the country. And what we always hope is that you are better informed and that you've left the program much more empowered to make sense of the issues that affect our country's development. And of course, I want to give both panelists an opportunity for closing comments. But before I do, Minister Joseph, let us talk about the occupational climate for workers at the Chinese-funded stadium renovation project. Now, several messages were sent our way from people alleging to be workers at the site, in which they have been raising concerns about their main employer on the project, which is the Shanghai Bio Company. They actually won the bid to do the renovations at the cricket stadium, and we should caveat that by saying that the contractual arrangement did not start with this administration, that it started with the previous administration, and I suspect that they inherited that contractual arrangement that was in place for the renovation of the stadium. So that point needs to be made. But, Minister, the concerns that these workers raise range from a refusal of the company to pay NIS for the employees, concerns around being forced to work for more than 9 hours a day. In fact, I raised that in last week's editorial, that contravenes the labor code of the country. Some of the workers allege discrimination at the hands of the employees, as well as not very clear working terms and conditions. Have you been following that issue in respect of what the Ministry of Labor is doing and the Labor Commissioner's Office is doing to address those concerns?
Yes, we've gotten reports, and some of them quite concerning. Some of them, if true, will constitute direct breaches of our existing laws. And I must say, we've had instances in the past on other sites, and I think if it is that the company is engaging in these practices, they will be well advised to find out what happened recently when another employer tried similar. Um, we at the Ministry of Labor will not tolerate breaches of our labor laws, especially when those breaches amount to abuse of workers. So in that regard, we have made arrangements. We will be tending to this matter in quite in a hands-on and head-on manner in the coming weeks, including engaging with the company and other related and interested parties, as well as engaging the workers. And we will do so appropriately according to law, so that remedies can be put in place, that we do all in our power to remedy whatever issues are taking place on the site. But we have received the reports and will attend to them most aggressively.
So there will be an aggressive approach, and it's not going to be a case where because it's a sort of a gift of renovation from the government of the People's Republic of China, that it will be swept under the rug. And I say this against the backdrop of the them that feeding us rhetoric that was said by the previous Minister of Tourism when the gazebo was built at the Granitang lake there. You remember that? The them that feeding
Yeah.
us? At least you did.
But I think, you
At
know,
least,
Elon, we don't subscribe to that philosophy at all. And
yes.
we look
Yes.
after all our workers. And when I say our workers, all persons working in Grenada, whether they are nationals or not, the laws will apply to them, and we will ensure that whatever issues that are taking place on that site are speedily remedied.
Mhm. Absolutely. Minister, I will give you an opportunity for closing comments. We did not even get to the Electronic Communications Bill, but that may be for another session by yourself and with the Media Workers Association. But over to you for some closing comments, Minister.
Thank you very much, Kellon, for having me on the program. And must say to the viewers and listeners, I quite enjoyed the spirited discourse between Brother Bert and myself. I want to repeat that this government, we care, genuinely care about our people. And a big segment of our people comprise the workers of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And I must say, as Labour Minister, since I've joined the Ministry of Labour, on all levels, we have worked to improve the lot of workers. And in many instances, we worked along and in concurrence with the trade union movement. And we would like that to only grow as we continue to enjoy this period of stability and peace, where we can enter into collective bargaining negotiations and agreements and come out without protests and rancor, and come out with the union leaders themselves saying this is the best environment they have experienced in terms of collective bargaining. Brother Grimes said it in at the signing of the public sector agreement with government. Respect and mutual cooperation, both sides looking out for what's in the best interest of the workers. And I would think with that track record that we have set in the short time that we have been in office, resolving the 40-year-old pension issue where people who are entitled were not being paid, I would think that the unions by now would have been more on the same page as the members, where they trust us and they are pleased with what we're doing and show that they want to work with us. So I'm at this stage making a public appeal and extending a public invitation to the union to join the conversation on pension reform, because we know pension reform is in the best interest of our people, and our mandate as government is to do what's best for our people. So if we've determined that pension reform is in the best interest of our people, our country, our economy, pension reform will happen. So I'm inviting the unions to participate in the discourse. Let your voice be heard while there is yet time to make whatever tweaks that the union might suggest that we may find make sense. So I would just like to say to workers, we have your backs. We are looking out for you. You have a government that cares. And we are intent on moving our country forward. And we are aware that we need all our people to do that. So let's do it together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Senator the Honorable Claudette Joseph, Minister for Legal Affairs, Labor and Consumer Affairs in the state of Grenada. Mr. Patterson, over to you for some closing comments, sir.
I think the minister's closing statements is what I think guides a lot of the issues here, right? And in the last statement the minister made, in somehow trying to separate the unions from its members, which is something that several of the speakers at media spoke to, right? That one has to remember that all the trade unions in Grenada have as many green or yellow members. So we don't have the opportunity to speak to one side or the other side. A statement was made, we are partial. We are not impartial. We are not meant to be impartial. And I think understanding that will assist the minister and the government as to what we do and what we are engaged to do and what we are mandated to do. So we wouldn't care, all right? Who is in government, number one. Number two, we would, if this government did 50 things that were to the benefit of the workers, and they did one thing that we consider not to be the benefit of workers, we won't keep quiet. So I think that's an expectation from a lot of statements that have been made and how the unions are treated with, right? In that, as some people say, even in the police force now, you have party police, and because I've been hearing things about NNP police and NDC police, and that no, we don't have that opportunity. And therefore, one has to understand us, because earlier in my statements, I indicated that whether it is during the revolution or during Gary time or whoever, there's always the means that we have to represent the workers who pay us, and we have no apology or no excuse for that. So if it is one worker who feels he's not being treated fairly, or one group of workers who feels they're not being treated fairly, it doesn't matter to me whether this government is worker friendly or not worker friendly, etc. on other matters. We deal with the issues as they come, and several issues will have come up today that I think that there's engagement needed, and not at the GTUC level. Because let me say, even on the pension matters, the TUC cannot negotiate on behalf of the unions on the pension matters. I want to repeat, which apparently the government is not aware of. The GTUC, the Trade Union Council, cannot negotiate. We can only engage in consultation on matters. But anything relating to pension and direct benefits to the workers has to be negotiated with the unions, either together or individually, which is not something that apparently everyone is aware of. So we, like I say, we will take part in consultations, and we would go into those consultations knowing exactly what we're going in to discuss, with some terms of reference, which is what we are trying to get. And let me say, we have not received that as yet. We've received final copies, right? Which we've evaluated. There's a lot of problems involved, but this is not the time to go into them. We don't have the time to go into them, and we will get our opportunity. And just to indicate to the government, you need to negotiate this matter. This matter is not a matter that you can rubber stamp and push down anyone's throat. Sorry, it wouldn't work that way. And that, to me, is all I need to say. And this discussion today sort of brought out a good bit of that. Thank you for being on your program.
Absolutely. Mr. Bert Patterson and Senator the Honorable Claudia Joseph, thank you for appearing on this week's edition of the Bub Report. And again, for the mothers, happy Mother's Day. And do enjoy and be merry. There is a lot to celebrate, mothers. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Panelists, thank you for your appearance on the Bub Report this week. Viewers and listeners, this has been another edition of the Bub Report. Again, as a reminder, this week's program was pre-recorded, so unfortunately, we were not able to take your comments live on air, as I myself am attending a Mother's Day event in Brooklyn, New York, hosted by my dear aunt, Rita Gabriel. Rita Gabriel, who normally hosts the Brooklyn Mother's Day activity that's happening in Brooklyn, New York. So if you are around and if there is still more tickets, certainly we hope that you can join us there. On behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub, wishing everyone a pleasant week. Take care now. Bye-bye.